see a lot when people talk about this this hero worship that goes on in society, especially with Trump.
The politicians in general.
The type of hero worship that goes on for somebody like a Pete Buttigieg is really perplexing. And, you know, Joe Biden's been the vice president. He was a senator for, 40 years. He's the president now. I can understand there being a knee-jerk defense of somebody that you feel like you have a connection to. Again, it's all BS, but, understanding human psychology, I get Joe on that level to a degree. But Pete, I mean, that is the greatest media creation I've ever seen.
It's a Clinton. It's brought to you by the Clintons.
And the average liberal who looks at Pete and admires him the way a conservative admires Trump, they really don't see the connection. Like, I don't understand how they do. It does not compute with them that they're just as sycophantic as they are on the MAGA side when they think that Trump can't do anything wrong. Whereas with Pete, he hasn't done anything but done wrong. He hasn't done anything right. He is a disaster.
Are we going right into Pete? We're going to go right into transfer?
Can't help it, because you're seeing what's happening as a result of the train derailment in East Palestine. Got it right. They don't even want to acknowledge that there's some responsibility on his part. Every stupid sycophant, every paid consultant is running cover for this guy. And we all know why they're doing it. But obviously, we'd like to hear your thoughts as to what
you are following this whole little thing, right?
Yeah. Oh, it's quite scary, right? Because this could happen anywhere. I mean, my train tracks are, not now. Maybe years ago, I could have thrown a baseball and hit them. Maybe a little, maybe farther. You know what I mean? But that's where our train tracks are. I mean, this could happen anywhere. Yeah. And so it's something I think most people have been saying. This is coming. Something like this is coming, not just on the railroad side, but across our infrastructure, across our industry. Just listening to Ralph Nader the other day talk about how that poor man died in that Caterpillar plant, fell into the vat of molten, lava, basically. Thermal annihilation is what the coroner's report said. Left behind 3 little girls. All because Caterpillar didn't want to abide by any safety regulations. There's no way of charging these people with any criminal actions, and their pals in government are not going to do anything about it. And they're going to circle the wagons and protect themselves, just like what we're seeing with here. I'm going to post in our private chat, because I can't put it in the comments, I guess, an essay I wrote a couple of years ago when Buttigieg was running for president. I looked into his time in the military, what he actually did, how he never got a security clearance, how he never had an MOS, how this is all just one preparation for him running nationally. He knew that having that military pedigree would benefit him. And certainly, if you remember during the campaign, there are photos of him carrying an M4 in uniform all the time, even though he really didn't do anything. And I titled, for people who haven't seen it, it's in Counterpunch, Heaven Protect Us from Men Who Live the Illusion of Danger. And that's what you have. You have like this notion that these men and women are serious, that they have somehow gone through life experiences that have hardened them, that Pete Buttigieg's time in Afghanistan was the same as JFK's time with PT-109 in the Pacific during the Second World War, that somehow these are men, and women that have been hardened by life experiences because they've chosen to put themselves into these realms. The same thing too, that somehow that these people are going to, the fact that, say, Joe Biden is still self-promoting as being Union Joe. Joe, right? I mean, like Joe from Scranton, Pennsylvania, is still talking about the hard scrabble he came from, about his his dad and his uncle, and blue, lunch pail type politics. And after what they just did to the railroad workers back in December, and so Buttigieg, you have that. You have these rail issues. You have, of course, all the things that have happened with the airlines.
I was going to say, let's talk about Southwest just in and of itself. Like, the whole thing is a disaster.
Well, I'm flying Southwest in 2 weeks, so let's all knock on wood and hope it's still going and still flying at that point. But same thing too. But then also, even we had 2 years ago the supply chain issues. The ports were all messed up. The trucks coming out of the ports couldn't get out. I mean, on and on. And at that point, particularly when Pete went on paternity leave, which is something that most people in this country don't have, he went on it though, right?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So they're so out of touch. Oh, good.
And he went on it for like 2 or 3 months.
Yeah, right. I mean, nobody has that. Meanwhile, that was at the point where, like, first time, I'm almost 50 years old. I've never seen stores that were missing stuff on the shelves. I've never gone into a Target and seen it empty like I saw it 2 years ago. And he's on paternity leave and it's not really his fault anyway. Yeah, he's the secretary, but he just took over. I mean, the whole idea, I think, was that most people have no idea who the Secretary of Transportation ever is. And if he does stuff, he kind of goes around and opens up new airports or stands on ships and gets his photo taken, like that kind of thing. That this was going to be not a real serious job. No one's going to pay attention to it, but it allowed him to be out. And I think most importantly, it would allow him to be out meeting the high profile big donors of the Democratic Party. They're only just getting to know him. And of course, this catastrophe that has been his time in running the transportation department, most highlighted by what's happened here in Palestine, is just, and more is going to come. More is going to come. We have a corrupted, degraded, thoroughly debased infrastructure in this country that is controlled by a greedy industry that's bought off the politicians. I'm surprised it hasn't been worse than what we've seen.
And one of the things that I was just watching, like the parts on these trains are like from the turn of the century. And I mean like the last century, by the way. And it's so absurd that it almost feels like the bizarro world. Like, how would you not expect a derailment to happen? How would you not expect that? And by the way, another thing, and this doesn't get talked about enough, is what those products that are being transported, who they're benefiting and what they're for. Because my understanding is that our railways that go through our towns that potentially pollute and poison our people are taking things through them that never benefit people in this country. And we have that down here, specifically a railway that goes across in Miami through some of our vulnerable areas. And it's stuff that gets shipped from the port. So it's mining the resources, poisoning our people, and sending things overseas. So there's not even a benefit you have to look at everything societally, like cost benefit. Like, yeah, some things aren't great, but we need it because of X, Y, and Z. This doesn't do anything for us. This just profits the railway carriers.
Well, it's something I was talking about with a friend of mine about, he was talking about the Northeast. I was talking about here, North Carolina. You drive around, I had that campaign last year and I went across the entire state. We're a big state, lots of geographic differences in North Carolina. And you saw the same things over and over again. And you see the same destitution, the same towns that have been left behind, whether it be white towns or black towns, mountain towns or coastal towns. It's the same thing. I mean, the number of times I saw this past year, and I had seen this before, but you pass through, so you don't pay much attention. But now I'm a candidate out there, shaking hands and kissing babies and everything. And so you notice these things more. And, but the number of times I saw this past year, see things that look like scenes out of movies, gas stations that were overgrown with ivy and moss and vegetation. The number of times you see that. And what we were talking about was this idea that we have these pass through towns. These towns that have been denuded, that have been devoid, that the industry's been taken out of. There's no manufacturing anymore. There's no small farms anymore. There's nothing in these towns. And so they become nothing but pass-through towns. And they're used. They're utilized for services. You have a gas station. You have a Hardee's. You have a Taco Bell. That's it. That's the whole purpose. It's to facilitate other people. And that's what most of rural America is like. I don't know anything about Palestine, Ohio. I'd never heard of it. I would have called it Palestine as well, right? I mean, never heard of the place. The reason why I know of it now is because you had this terrible, yeah, right. I mean, this apocalyptic type of I don't know if those photos are photoshopped or not. And the things that you're reading. I don't
think so. And here's the thing is that if the mainstream media were covering this, then I would question all of the photos. But the fact that they're not touching this really, this is getting so little coverage for the disaster that it is. And they've already now cleared it. The EPA said, it's safe to go back in there. No, I don't think so. And I don't believe them. And you know that what the railroad carrier is paying the town $25,000, which comes out to $5 a person in that town. Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.